All right, so let's get started by first generating our Svelte project. I'm going to be using npx Degit, which is a command you can use to basically generate a Svelte template. So we'll do npx Degit Svelte JS / template, and then now we're going to put in the name of the template folder. So I'm just going to call it Wordle. And just like that, it will go ahead and generate that. Now I'm going to open this up in VS Code by typing cd Wordle and then doing a code dot to open this in VS Code. And let me pull this over here. There we go. Okay, so inside of this folder, I'm going to get rid of a few things. First thing we're going to do is we're going to remove all of the CSS and just add a few basic styles, which we'll actually be using for the remainder of the project. The first one we're going to do is we're going to get rid of all of the margin and the padding, and then we're going to add in a few colors that we'll be using throughout the rest of the project. The first one is this orange color, which is the Svelte orange. Then we're going to have a very, very dark color for our backgrounds, a green for the green color, and a lighter gray for the dark color. And then finally, we're going to do, for the body, we're going to set the font family to Cambria, like so. And we will also make the background color to a white smoke, like that. And that is actually it for our style.css for the remainder of the project. So if you want to copy down these colors, feel right ahead to do that. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, I'm also going to get rid of this scripts folder, which has this setup TypeScript file. If you wanted to do this in TypeScript and follow along, all you would have to do is type in node scripts / setup TypeScript like that, and just run it, and it'll actually convert your entire project to a TypeScript project. But we're going to be doing this in plain old JavaScript / Svelte. So now that we're done with that, I can do npm I to install all of our required dependencies. And once that's finished installing, we can do npm run dev to actually run this in the development server. So by doing this and opening up localhost 8080, we can see our project is working. So that looks good. I'm going to just keep it about this big right here and dock that over there. This is the last time we'll be using our terminal, so I'm going to hide this right now. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, I'm going to close this public folder. And inside of the main, I'm just going to get rid of our props, as well as in the app.svelte component, I'm just going to completely clear it out. So that way we can start from scratch. So let's actually get started with this. And the first thing we're going to do is I'm just going to create a main kind of component, which is going to hold all of our HTML elements. So the first thing we're probably going to want, if we look at the actual Wordle website, is a navigation bar. All I'm going to do is put text up here, but you could add like a color select, leaderboards, a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'm just going to do a nav and put the words Wordle clone, like so. And you'll see that comes up right here. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to come down here and add a board components. Now, I haven't created this component, so let's actually go right on ahead and do so. I'm going to create a folder for our components called components, and I'm going to create a board.svelte. There we go. So our board.svelte component is basically where we're going to want to have, I'm just going to keep the Wordle website open, is basically where we're going to want to create this grid, which is 5 by 6. So in here's where we're going to create the grid. We're also going to need a component for our keyboard. So let's also create that. I'm going to create a new component called keyboard.svelte, like so. And then I'm going to also add this right here. Keyboard, like so. Okay, so we have those two components, but we actually need to import them. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's create a scripts tag up at the top and do imports keyboard from components/keyboard.svelte, like so. And then we're also going to do imports board from /board.svelte, like so. And now we should see that it looks like this. So let's actually go ahead and style up our page. There's not many styles we need to add. We basically just need to style up this div. So I'm going to do for our nav, I'm going to do a background color of var, and we're going to get that BG color. And this is just that really, really, really dark gray. And then I'm going to set the color to whites, the font's weight to bold, the padding to 15px, not 115, 15, the font size to 2em, and we're just going to text align center, and that'll make it look like that. So we have our navigation bar out of the way. And one thing, if you don't know about Svelte, is that all styles are based on the component they're in. So these styles will only be applied to this component right here. So let's actually go ahead and get started on our board component, which is going to be a fun component. So let's actually go ahead and get started with this. First thing we're going to want to do is go into our board.svelte, and the first thing you might be thinking of is, how do we create a board like this? Well, basically this is just an array of rows, right? So you can imagine this is an array of rows, an array of rows, an array of rows. So let's actually go ahead and create a store.js file, and this is where we're going to have our grid stored. So let's just create a function called create grid. And in this function, we're going to do const grid is equal to an array. And then what we're going to do is we're going to loop for let I equal 0, I is less than, in this case, we're going to loop for 6 total columns. And then we're going to do I++. And then we're going to do grid.push, a new array. And then we're going to do an inner for loop. We're going to do let x is equal to 0, x is less than 5, x++. And in here, we are just going to do grid of I of x is equal to an empty array, or an empty string, like so. And this is going to generate a grid where we have 6 rows, or 6 columns, right? So 6 vertical columns and 5 horizontal rows. And then we'll just return the grid. Now, the reason I didn't just quickly create this like this, right? Because I could have just done this for 5, right? And then just copied this, right? Like so. This is basically what we're creating. But the reason I didn't just do this is because I want this to be dynamic, just in case in the future you ever want to extend this and say have a 10-letter word or a 3-letter word or a 9-letter word in 3 guesses, right? So you can kind of extend it in the future. And then we're just going to return the grid. So now that we do that, what we also need to do, right, is we need to create a store. So we're going to do const board is equal to a writable of create grid as the default value. And then we're just going to export this so it's available in other components. Now, writable is required as an import from Svelte. So we're going to do import writable from Svelte/store, like so. And now we can create this writable grid, which we can use throughout our application. It's basically like using an effect or creating a provider in React. So inside of our board, now that we have this writable store, let's just go up and create our script, right? And we're going to import board dot store, like so. And in here, we'll have our writable array of our grid, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a div with a class of game, like so. And we're going to iterate over each column and then create a row for each column. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to iterate. And to do that in Svelte, we can use an each. So we're going to do each, the array, so board, and we're going to access it with the $sign to get the current value dynamically as column, like so. And then we'll end our each block like this. So anything we do in here now will be repeated as many times as there are columns. So if we just do this like this, right, and I just type hello, we should see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows that we have just now created, right? So instead of just putting the word hello in there, let's actually go ahead and create a letter, or a cell as we're going to call it. So we're going to create a new thing called a cell, and I'm going to create it inside of cell.svelte. And in here, we're going to take in a x and a y. And these are going to be the x and the y coordinates of our grid. So for example, this right here would be a y coordinate of 0 and a x coordinate of 0, while this down here would be a y coordinate of 4 and an x, or a y coordinate of 3 and a x coordinate of 2. So let's actually go ahead and do this now. So inside of every row, right? So for every row, we're going to iterate with another each loop, each column as row, like so. And we're going to end our each like that. And now what we want to do is create a cell, right? So we're going to do cell, like so. And we need to come up here and import cell from /cell. Now, to actually get access to the x and y, aka the row and the column, we can just do a comma and get access to the y, like this, and the row is going to be the x. So now we can pass in y and pass in x, like so. We could also do y is equal to y and x is equal to x, but that's a little bit of extra code that isn't really required. So now we should have, just like before, a whole bunch of rows and columns. So let's actually style this up so we can actually see that, right? So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm actually going to style the cell so we can kind of see how this is all working, right? So I'm going to create a style tag in our cell.svelte. And if we have our previous example to kind of go off of here, the cell has a good bit of properties, right? So each cell is going to have a .cell div where we're basically going to put the letter. For now, I'm just going to put the letter A so you can kind of get the gist. And if you look, we get a whole bunch of A's. So what we want to do is we want to style each cell with a specific width and a height. So I'm going to do .cell. I'm going to give them all a width of, let's say, 70 pixels, a height of 70 pixels, a color of white, which means we're going to give them a background of our BG color, right? So if you look now, we can see our little cells. Then what we're going to do is we're going to give them all a margin of 4 pixels. We are going to do display, flex, align items to the center, and justify content to the center as well. And this is going to center the letter A vertically and horizontally inside of each cell, like you'll see. Next, we're going to set the font size to 55 pixels and the border radius to, let's say, 5 pixels, like so. And there we go. Now we have our letters. Now, to actually get this in a proper line, what we're going to need to do is go to our board, right? In this game, which I'm going to rename it to game board for a little bit better of a name, right? For each game board, what we're going to need to do is we need to center this on the screen, right, horizontally, and also set a little bit of margin to the top. So let's go ahead and do that. .game. We're going to do a margin of 50 pixels. So that's going to put 50 pixels top and bottom. And then we're going to do auto to actually center it. And what you'll notice is it only did the 50 pixels. And that's because the width of the parent components, auto doesn't really mean anything until we set the width to fit content. And like so, what you can see is we've now created a vertical stack of our columns. So now what we're going to want to do is for each row, right? Each row, we want to display these flex. So they're all in a line. So .row, we're going to do display flex, not mustix, flex, like so. And now we have created our beautiful matrix of letters. So you can see we've created our grid of letters, right? So that is it for today's episode. This has been creating the grid as well as creating the basic boilerplate of the application. I guess one last thing that we can do before next episode, where we'll actually get started making the keyboard and fixing it to the bottom, is we're also going to get rid of the letter A, and instead we're going to dynamically get the letter from our board, right? So let's try to do that. First, let's do $ equals to get the letter, and set it equal to, we're going to need our board at the Y position, comma, the X position. And I'm going to have to import board from store, like so. And what you'll see now is they're all empty because we removed it here. But to add them back, we would just do letter, like so. And they're all still going to be empty. Now, one thing you may have noticed is we didn't just do like const or let. And that's because whenever we change the value in the board, we want this to be dynamic. So we use this reactive statement declaration. Now, to actually see that this worked, let's go ahead and in our store, let's just say, let's actually just in here, right? Inside of here, in our letter, let's just say board. Let's just do board dot set, or we'll do board dot update to get the previous board. And I'm just going to add the letter A, let's just say right here. So let's just do const new is equal to the previous new board at position 1, because we're going to put it right here, of element 1 as well. And let's just set it equal to H. And then what we have to do is we have to return the new board, like so. And what you'll see is we have now created the letter H inside of our board. And just like that, if I put this to 4, it's going to put it over here. In the Y column, if I put this to 3, it's going to put it down here. So this is how we have our board all set up. I'm going to get rid of this. And in the next episode, we're actually going to get started by making the keyboard for Wordle. So I'll see you then.